My name is Andra Tanase. I'm a youth worker and a facilitator, working a lot in Erasmus world and in the Erasmus environment. And I've been in this field for more than 15 years and enjoy every single experience of Erasmus. Community mapping tool can be a lifeline in your project and in your activity. And why is that? In the community mapping, you basically capture both the snapshot of the community, who are its stakeholders, what are the relationships between them, what are the resources, what are the risks and the challenges in the community, and what are the existing initiatives. And that's the snapshot. But in the community mapping, you can also capture dynamic processes, such as changing relationships between the stakeholders, changing dynamics in terms of economics, in terms of sociology, in terms of political. Basically, it is a radiography of the community in which you are working in and in which you want to create change. So actually, it's also a method that you find in youth work, in conflict mapping, in strategy mapping, in military affairs, to do a mapping of the situation. Situation analysis, situation mapping, community mapping. And this is, if you want, a very, very basic model. And what we'll do is a 2D or 3D, if you want, you can be creative, representation of the community that you live and work in. Yeah? And what shall we include normally in a mapping of the community? The steps are quite simple. First, we ask everybody to map the stakeholders. Who has a say in the specific topic of the training? So if we are talking about non-formal education methods, we will probably map teachers, parents, students, media, and so on. The stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders in our youth work? Who are the stakeholders? Those people or groups with importance in our youth work. That's how we can define a stakeholder. Those who are important in our... Who are they? Young people. Inshallah, they are there. They are among the first. Who else is important in youth work? Policymakers. And example of policymaker?
Mostly local policymakers like the mayor,
the mayor, the youth directorates or so on, yes. Who else is important in youth work? Stakeholders. The youth workers, yeah. NGOs, youth workers. Who else? National agency, yeah. Schools, educators, you go, parents, media. The second step is to map the relationship between these different stakeholders. It is quite important to understand the relationship because based on those relationships, we will be able or not be able to do different activities in the community. It's important to show them and also to understand the relationship between them. Because knowing that there is a good relationship between the mayor and a certain headmaster, and you have a good relationship with that school because you did programs, can get you to policymakers and to effective Key Action 3 programs. After that, the issue mapping is quite important. The issue meaning either the problem or the lack or the opportunities that exist and we want to address in Erasmus programs. Something that normally is left out is the aspect about the resources that exist in the community. And these resources can be different. They can be people who can help us with our activities. They can be material resources. They can be funding opportunities. And they can very easily be other initiatives that we can link in. So that's another step in the mapping. Resources. What are the resources in that community so that your action has success? Examples of resources.
Money.
Money.
Facilities.
Facilities.
Human resources. People.
What did you say?
Human resources.
Human resources, people, yes. Facilities. All these are resources. Existing initiatives, it's also important to know. Risks, things that can happen, dangerous zones and so on. And then also in a community map you can put a dot and say, okay, here I might have a possible way of intervening, on this issue, on this problem. If you want to do it well, there is one element that you need to consider, and this is participation. So if you do a community mapping, you have to do it with the stakeholders. That is the best way, and we would always encourage the young people in our community, whenever they're thinking about a project, whenever they're thinking about an initiative, whenever they're thinking about a policy change, a training, to start with doing a community mapping. In the projects, we always include the elements of presenting the realities in your countries. Sometimes even the intercultural presentation and intercultural nights. In them, we could include community mapping. So both in the non-formal and in the formal and informal aspect of education, this is quite a complex yet simple in the form tool to understand better and to work better in the community. We said how to do it in a participatory way. And the challenge, even if you're here, to try to connect with whoever is the stakeholders and doing an analysis, so listing those issues and then showing it in a graphic format or like artistic format or whatever format that you want that is friendly. After we do the mapping, we can exchange the different realities, so we see what others have mapped, and later on in the process, depending on what we want to do, we can use this community mapping as a tool to follow the dynamics and even to monitor the activities that we are implementing. Community mapping may well be used in the evaluation phase as well, where we can have a comparison between the initial and the final stage of the community after we have done our project, after we have reached our results and we see some impact. And why do you think it's useful to do a community mapping in a program like ours? 5 reasons and then you got rid of my blah blah blahing.
Because you're gonna work with it, so it's easier to see.
It's good to know what's up and you want to do something about it.
Good to know the reality if you want to change or do something in that reality.
Know your goals.
No? Yeah, you know the goals, and this links with it. It's a tool. It's like if you want almost a lock frame in visible. Why else?
So you overall the needs.
Yeah, knowing the needs.
It might shorten the time you have to put into your work.
It might shorten the time because many of the risks, if you map them, for example, don't happen. And I have a quick story from the Philippines with Nonviolent Peace Force. And Nonviolent Peace Force is basically like a volunteering program. It's not a volunteering because they also get some pay, but they go in different conflict areas and work with the community. And my friend went to the Philippines, and it was in the time of quite a lot of guerrilla work and la 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 la. But the thing is, he was saying that doing this mapping and for the first 6 months relating to the community, it's an opportunity actually to relate, to speak, to know, to gain the trust of those that you will work with, was the most important thing. He said for 6 months, they drank tea and working on getting accepted in that community. Getting to know the language, and not only the language as in English, Arabic, Romanian, Hungarian, Slovak, but the language in terms of style of communication and interaction. And this is one of the ways to do it even before you go with an intervention. For young people to use this method is something quite empowering, especially if they work on different processes of community change. Because basically, when you think about changing a community, you need to think in a rather complex way, but using a simple tool. And community mapping is such a tool. Basically, by doing community mapping, the young people and the youth workers also engage with a feeling of participation, of empowerment, of they acquire complex analysis skills, because it's not just stating one aspect about the community, but also the different relationship between politics, sociology, education. So analytic skills are very strongly present in community mapping, empowerment, and also the skill of identifying entry points and seeing what they can do, where to start from. This is something that comes out most often in community mapping.